Hey guys, Chris from Provo Beast Audio Installation, and in today's video we're replacing the factory door speaker in this 2017 Nissan Rogue. Now in this install we're going to show you how to replace this 6.5-inch factory speaker with an aftermarket set. Let's get started. Now, one quick thing to note, depending on your trim level Nissan Rogue, you may or may not have Bose. If you have Bose, you'll notice not only do you have a 6.5 in the door, but you will also have a tweeter in the dash and even a center channel, where that center channel will have that Bose logo. If you don't see the Bose logo on your center channel, or if you don't even have a center channel, you just have the base audio system. If you have the base audio system, you can essentially put in any aftermarket speaker in this location and it'll work just fine as long as it's a 6.5. If you have Bose, there are a couple of things to note. First of all, this Bose speaker here is a 2 ohm speaker, where traditionally most aftermarket speakers are 4 ohms. If you put a 2 ohm speaker here, it will work great with the factory Bose amplifier. But if you end up putting a 4 ohm, it's going to be less sensitive, it's going to sound quieter than the factory speaker did, and you're going to be disappointed at its performance. Now, second thing to note, both the mid-range speaker here in the front door and the tweeter in the dash, they are on the same channel, meaning they're wired in parallel. Or in other words, the amplifier is pushing the same signal to this speaker and this speaker through the same channel. They're not on their own separate channels, which means that they're both getting the same signal. Now in this video here today, the customer has opted for that option. They want to keep the factory tweeters up in the dash. This speaker has gone bad, so they're looking to have this one replaced. So in today's video, instead of just putting a mid bass here, we're actually going to be adding a 6.5-inch coaxial, because again, this is getting full range anyway, and we're going to keep the factory tweeter up in the dash. I have a panel tool, and then we're also going to use a 10mm socket. First thing we need to do with our panel tool is we got to remove our trim piece that's up and around our handle here. So we're going to go ahead and grab this and start working it out slowly. You can start on one end. Now we do not want to crack this piece whatsoever, so slowly kind of just work it on out. Just like so. Has a ton of clips on the back. Next thing here is this cover actually also has to come off. It's also just held on with clips. So I kind of start on this side. Kind of pop these clips on free here. Disconnect your harnesses. It's out of the way. Next item is we have 3 10mm that we have to remove. This one up here is going to be longer, so make sure you keep that one separate. Now there is one more screw underneath this panel, but this guy has to come out of the way. So let's go ahead and pop this guy on out. Okay, so there's 2 clips here on the back holding this guy on. This guy comes on off. Next, we got to remove this trim piece, your switches, and there is a hook in the front. So we kind of want to start here in the middle, kind of work this on up here, get the back. Pull this guy out. Like I said, there's a hook on the front, so you can't start in the front or you'll break that. Go ahead and disconnect your harnesses off your switches, just like that. And finally, we get this last 10mm bolt. It's also a long one. So with that all out of the way, we actually don't need to pull the 10 out of the handle. The handle is going to stay on the door. Our sail panel is also doesn't need to move, it can stay in place. Everything else here up and around the door is held on with clips. We have a panel tool. You can kind of get your fingers here in the back, start popping the door panel free. Now you do have a clip up here as well, so I kind of get my finger in there to pop it out by my hand. There it is. Okay, so with all those now free, we can lift up. Now if you notice any of your clips that stay in the door, we can pop them on out, put them back in the panel here before we reinstall the panel once the speaker has been replaced. Next, here's our factory 6.5-inch speaker, 3 10mm holding that in. there is our factory speaker here. So with this out of the way, what we can do now is head over to the bench to show you the parts that we're going to need for our install. All right, so here at the bench, the parts that we're going to need for the install, first and foremost, are the speakers that we've chosen to go with. We've opted for these JBL Stadium GTO 620 speakers. These are 6.5-inch coaxial speakers, and what make these special, it's an actual 2 ohm speaker. It's not a 4 ohm traditional aftermarket speaker, and that is going to jive really well with our factory Bose amplifier, which we are retaining. Again, if you use a 4 ohm speaker, it'll still work. From the user standpoint, just won't sound as loud as your factory speaker did. We can link our favorite speakers and some options down in the description for you in case you want to replace your tweeter as well. Okay, so to accommodate this 6.5-inch in the factory location, we need a couple of parts. Now, for sure we need these bracket adapters. These are the Metra 82-7400. These essentially will allow our speaker to fit exactly in the same mounting locations as the factory one did. They come in pairs, same with our speakers. Now, wiring harness adapters. Here is a big note with these. There has been a revision with these wiring harness adapters. These are the Metra 72-7400. However, there is a difference between the harness styles. This one happens to be a white harness style, part of this revision. And what our calls for is actually the black version of this, which is the Metra 72-7401, but it's a different revision. Unfortunately, these harness adapters, the white ones, the 72-7401 with a white connection, doesn't fit our door harness plugs that we ordered in specifically for this job. It uses the other style, which we don't have in stock. We can link that other style in the description, but this end is black, and that's the one that you want, which will fit in your application if you have the same generation Rogue as we do. Again, we'll link that down in the description, both harness versions, in case you have one versus the other. Unfortunately, this isn't going to work for us here today, so we'll set this off to the side, and we're just going to hardline these speakers in, and we're going to show you how we're going to do that here today. So the first thing we need to do is pull the bracket out of our packaging here, and we're going to start with the driver's side door speaker. We're going to get it mounted up, and we'll head over to the car to get this installed. Alright, so we got that all mounted up here. Now we notice that there is actually no hole in our bracket adapter to allow our harnesses to pass on through, as the factory harness plug is on the outside of the speaker and not inside the actual door itself. So we're going to go ahead and put a little hole here so we can allow our wiring harness to pass through without getting pinched behind the bracket. Now for our harness here, we just have some OFC copper wire, speaker wire, that we're going to use. Now this speaker terminal style is a little bit different than your traditional style, where it's a screw terminal versus a spade terminal, which you'll see on most aftermarket sets. Because this is a screw terminal, we're going to go ahead and actually use some wire ferrules, just so our wire doesn't get totally crushed in those screws. And it'll also make for a nice and clean connection. Then we'll run that wire up through the hole that we made, and we'll hardwire it into the door. Alright, so we got this all done. Now to check our polarity so we know what wire to hook it up to, when we hook it up to our polarity tester, we put the harness back in that we cut off. It looks like right side is this bluish purple, left side is this brown. So we got our positive and negative hooked up there, right on those leads. So if we do a pop here, you see it pop out, which then tells us that this right side, or this blue slash purple, is going to be our positive, and this brown is going to be our negative. Alright, so we got our speaker all done here. We got our harness all crimped up. Remember, brown is going to be our native, blue is going to be our positive as we determined on the bench. Got those crimp caps all on there. Put a zip tie to hold it all together. Speaker is nice and secure. Let's quickly do a test, make sure everything's working. Then we can reassemble the door panel. Alright, so with everything working properly, let's go ahead and reassemble the door panel. Alright, that's about it. Door panel is all reassembled. It sounds great. At this point of time, we are done with this install. If you want to know how to do the passenger side, it's identical. It's just a mirror image. And if you want to see how we did the rear door speakers, we'll link that video down in the description, which again walks you through step by step on how to install those in this vehicle. Thanks again for watching, and we will see you in the next video.